Well, howdy students, glad to see y'all here today. I'm your professor, Dr. Sayed, now we're underway. This here's our 6th class, hope you're ready for the session. So pull out your notebooks, time for another lesson. That's S-E-Y-E-D, you can call me Dr. Sayed. Now let's open up the books and fill our heads.
Welcome everyone. This is the start of our journey into one of the most critical and fascinating areas of cybersecurity, deep learning for intrusion detection. Think of intrusion detection systems as the digital guards of a network. They're always on alert, looking for anything suspicious. In this course, we're giving these guards a huge upgrade using the power of deep learning. Today, we're going to build the foundational knowledge for that by starting with the building blocks, linear models. Let's dive in. Let's start by categorizing our machine learning tools. First up are parametric algorithms. Think of them as following a recipe. They assume the data has a specific fixed relationship, like a straight line or a simple curve. This makes them fast to learn, effective on small data, but they are rigid. If the data doesn't fit the recipe, the model might underfit. It won't capture the real complexity. It's a good starting point, but not always the final answer. Now, let's look at the opposite parts. Non-parametric algorithms. These are the artists. They don't follow a fixed recipe. They are flexible and can model complex, twisty, and nonlinear relationships in the data. This flexibility means higher performance is possible, especially with messy data, but they need a lot more data to truly learn, and they can easily overfit, meaning they memorize the training data too well and fail on new unseen data. It's a trade-off between simplicity and complexity. In supervised learning, we learn from labeled examples, input and desired output. We can break these down using our new categories. Parametric, the recipe models, linear, ridge, lasso, and logistic regression, plus naive Bayes. These are the fast, simple models. Non-parametric, the artist models, decision trees, k-nearest neighbors, and random forests. These are the powerful, flexible models. Understanding these types helps you choose the right tool for any machine learning job. We begin with the absolute foundation, linear regression. The key word here is linear. We are assuming the relationship between your input features and your output target is a straight line. The model's entire job is to find the perfect slope and intercept for that line, the coefficients that best fits your data. This simplicity is its strength. It's easy to understand and serves as a benchmark for everything else we'll build. Why do we spend so much time on a simple model like linear regression? Because it's the bedrock. It's a foundational model. The concepts here are used in much more complex models. It's a benchmark. When you test a new complex algorithm, you always compare it to the simple linear regression. If the complex one doesn't beat it, why use it? It explains relationships. By looking at the coefficients, you can easily see which inputs matter most and how they affect the output. It gives you immediate understanding of your data. We have two flavors of linear regression. The first is simple linear regression. Simple means we are only looking at one predictor variable, one input feature to predict our target. For example, using just the size of a house to predict its price, one input, one output. Easy to visualize. The second flavor is multiple linear regression. This is much more common in the real world. We use multiple predictor variables, many input features, to predict the target. For example, predicting house price using size, number of bedrooms, and location. The model is still linear, but now we have a multi-dimensional plane instead of a simple line. The concept is the same. Find the best fit, but with more variables. How does the model find the best fit line or plane? It's all about minimizing the sum of squared error, or SSE. Error, this is the distance between the line's prediction and the actual data point. Squared error, we square the errors to make them positive and to heavily penalize large errors. The goal, the model constantly tweaks its parameters, the coefficients, to make the total SSE as small as possible. SSE is our cost function or loss function, the number we are trying to minimize to make the model perfect. What if the relationship isn't a straight line? What if it's a curve? We can still use linear regression principles by being clever. We use polynomial regression. We take our original feature and transform it using a nonlinear function, like squaring it, x2, cubing it, x3, or even taking a logarithm. By creating this new transformed feature, we can now model the curve using an otherwise linear approach. It's how we trick a linear model into being nonlinear. Let's look at a real-world example. Predicting fuel efficiency. Imagine we plot the weight of a car against its miles per gallon, MPG. It's probably not a straight line, but a curve. We could use polynomial regression, maybe squared weight, to capture that curve accurately. This is a great illustration of how transforming our data allows us to use simple, interpretable linear models for complex curvy relationships. Now for a crucial concept, regularization. Think of regularization as a personal trainer for your machine learning model. It keeps the model honest. We use it to tackle the biggest problem in modeling, overfitting. Overfitting is when the model is perfect on the training data, but terrible on new data. Regularization introduces a penalty to the cost function, punishing the model if it tries to use overly complex parameters. So, how does the trainer penalize the model? By adding two different types of penalty. Lasso regression, L1. The penalty is based on the absolute value of the coefficients. Crucially, Lasso can reduce the coefficient of a less important feature all the way to 0, effectively eliminating that feature. It helps with feature selection. Ridge regression, L2. The penalty is based on the square of the coefficients. Ridge shrinks the coefficients, reducing the impact of less important features, but it will never reduce a coefficient to 0. It keeps all features, just lessens their influence. Both methods fight overfitting by controlling model complexity. Next, we move to logistic regression. Don't let the name confuse you. It's primarily used for classification, not regression. It's still based on linear models, but it solves a completely different problem. Predicting a category like yes or no, spam or not spam, or in our case, intrusion or no intrusion. It's the gateway to classification. Why can't we use simple linear regression for classification? Imagine predicting spam, 1, or not spam, 0. Linear regression can predict values like 5 or 2. What does a probability of 5 mean? Nothing. It makes no sense for a categorical problem. We need a way to take the output of our linear model and squeeze it into the range of a probability between 0 and 1. The solution is the brilliant logistic sigmoid function. This function acts like a mathematical squisher. It takes the output of the linear model, which can be any number from negative infinity to positive infinity, and transforms it into a probability value that is always between 0 and 1. This probability is what logistic regression predicts, the likelihood of the target being the 1 category. It allows us to apply the power of linear modeling to classification problems. Just like linear regression, we need to find the best parameters, weights, coefficients. Define a cost function. We use a different cost function, often called cross-entropy loss, than SSE because our output is now a probability. Minimize the cost. The goal is still to minimize this cost function. Find the minimum. We calculate the derivative, but we can't solve it directly like in simple regression. Instead, we use a technique called gradient descent to iteratively find the minimum. Let's look at that next. Gradient descent is the engine that drives most machine learning. Imagine you're standing on a hill, your cost function, and you want to get to the lowest point, the minimum cost. You can't see the whole valley, so what do? You look around, find the steepest downward slope, the gradient, and take a small step in that direction. You repeat this process, iteratively updating your parameters until you reach the bottom. That's gradient descent, minimizing the cost function by repeatedly stepping in the direction of the steepest decline. Logistic regression is a powerful and efficient model. It bridges the gap between simple linear models and complex classification tasks, making it one of the most widely used and essential algorithms in the industry. What if we have more than 2 categories to predict? For example, classifying an image as a cat, dog, or bird. This is a multi-class classification problem. We simply extend logistic regression to handle this. The most common way is the one versus rest, OVR approach, where we train a separate logistic regression model for each class. So one model for cat versus not cat, one for dog versus not dog, and so on. We then pick the prediction with the highest probability. Logistic regression is versatile enough to handle both binary and multi-class problems. Next up is the very clever, very simple, naive Bayes classifier. It's a probabilistic model based on Bayes' theorem. The model is naive because of one strong assumption. It assumes that all your input variables are independent of each other. For example, when predicting if an email is spam, it assumes the word Viagra appears independently of the word free. This is unrealistic for real data, but But here's the surprise. It's incredibly effective anyway. The model is built on two simple probabilities calculated from your training data. The probability of each class, for example, how often spam emails appear. The conditional probability of a feature given a class, for example, how often the word money appears only in spam emails. The model uses these to predict the class for new data. Its simplicity and independence assumption mean it's lightning fast and works great on text, even though that assumption is technically naive. It's also often assumed that the data follows a Gaussian bell curve distribution for numerical features. The speed and effectiveness of naive Bayes make it the go-to choice for real-time classification. Its speed is unmatched, making it perfect for instantaneous classification. Text classification. This is where it shines. It's the classic algorithm for spam detection, categorizing news articles, and simple sentiment analysis. It can quickly process large documents and is highly effective. We're in the final stretch. One last classic algorithm to understand, the k-nearest neighbors, or KNN. The k-nearest neighbors, KNN algorithm, is perhaps the most intuitive. It's a lazy learner because it doesn't build a model during training. It just stores the entire training data set. When it's time to make a prediction for a new data point, it does the following. It finds the k closest data points, the neighbors, in the training set. It uses those k neighbors to determine the new points class, usually by a majority vote. The trick is determining closeness, which is typically done using the Euclidean distance, a straight line distance like measuring a hypotenuse. While simple and effective, KNN has its challenges. It's slow. Because it has to search the entire data set for neighbors every time a prediction is needed, it can be very slow with massive data sets. Curse of dimensionality. This is a big one. When you have a huge number of input variables, high dimensions, the idea of distance breaks down. Everything starts to look equally far away, making the nearest neighbor concept useless. The solution is often careful feature selection, only using the variables that truly matter. We choose the right k value by testing several options and using cross-validation to find the one with the lowest error. We've covered linear regression, regularisation, logistic regression, naive Bayes, and k-nearest neighbors. You now have a solid toolkit of fundamental supervised learning algorithms. Take a moment to think about which algorithm you would use for a spam filter. Hint, it needs to be fast, versus a lone risk predictor. Hint, you need to understand why it makes a decision. Next time, we will build on these concepts and move further into the deep learning journey. Thank you for your attention.